Hello and welcome to this presentation on launching a book in a way that feels true to you. My name is Rachel and I'm a writer and editor. Super excited to be here and to share this presentation with you. It's a workshop that I love hosting and yeah, just really excited to dive in. So here is a bit of an overview of where we're headed. We're going to look big picture at why we're even talking about this to begin with, just kind of the approach that I have with this whole presentation. I'll share an introduction about myself. Normally, when I host this live, I love to hear also where all of the writers are tuning in from and what you're writing. So feel free to contact me and share that with me. I would love to hear what you're working on. And then we're going to do some opening, right? Opening our minds, opening our hearts to these concepts. Um, Really, we're getting into this concept of developing inner trust, being able to hear your own intuition and listen to it. So we'll do that first before we get into some of the strategy. And then I do usually have Q&A at the end of this. If you have questions for me that you'd like to ask, I invite you to email me and get in touch. Would love to hear your thoughts. So, to start out, I want to share a few things that I believe about becoming an author. And the first is that publishing a book is not just about publishing a book. It is a profound journey of self-transformation. It's a way to empower your life in a whole new way, and to become a new version of yourself. You know, it's not just about making money or becoming well known. It's so much deeper than that. Your soul is craving an experience from this. There's a reason why you started this path and are on this journey. And even if you don't know completely why that is, just paying attention to what you want to get out of it. Um, there's this big thing that happens for a lot of authors of stepping into the spotlight, of letting themselves be seen. And whether or not you have resistance to that is part of what we're going to dive into today. So I just want to say, if you're listening to this, you have full permission to start to plan a book launch where you do it your way, where you trust your inner knowing more than any strategy or coach's guidance or, funnel or, you know, any of that. Like, this is going to be about you and honoring what you need and what you want. And I'm sure, as you've been in this journey of putting a book out there, starting to think about writing a book, you've Googled things like how to promote a book, how to publish, how to, launch. Um, the internet's going to tell you to do practical things like pay for marketing, learn how to use social media, like master the algorithms, right? Network, collect book reviews, start an email list, start a website. And it's easy to feel like in the beginning, you have to do all of those things to even have any kind of success. But what we're looking at with this presentation is not just that surface level, right? The iceberg above the water piece. We're going to go way deeper. And what I want you to really think about is what is at the bottom there? What is below the surface? What are the beliefs and thoughts that you've been having that are affecting how any of that strategy is going to play out? Um, this is so important. It's the behind the scenes, under the surface that's driving a lot of life, right? Our success, how we see ourselves, how we show up. So if there's any image you get more than anything from this presentation, it's this one. It's this iceberg. It's what's beneath the surface. So just to share a little bit about myself, I'm an 8-time self-published author. I live mostly on the nonfiction side of things, a lot of experience in memoir and poetry as well. Um, I was always a writer since I was a little kid. I loved writing and reading. And in high school, I got into journalism. I was the high school yearbook editor. Um, always excelled in those writing classes and ended up going to Northwestern University, starting out as a journalism major. But I got into the creative writing program and I ended up focusing on that. Um, so I finished with an English degree. And for the longest time, I did not apply my writing in the workplace. My career was a series of jobs that I liked or was okay with, but you know, things like project management and being in higher education, it involved some writing, but I wasn't a writer. Um, and then in 2020, when the pandemic came, I started working from home and I had more time. Um, I had less of a boss looking over my shoulder at what I was doing on the computer all day. So I would get my work done and then I would work on my book projects. And eventually I decided I want to just learn how to use Amazon KDP. I just wanted to experiment with that and see what that entailed. And so I created a book and it changed a lot for me. Um, it led me to think about having a full-time job as a writer, and I ended up getting a copywriting job and moving from California to Utah, really shifting a lot of my life. And anyways, so my books are poetry, memoir. I have a book for yoga teachers that I wrote. I've done ghostwriting projects, and I also sell ebooks on my website. Um, I've worked with hundreds of authors as an editor and coach. And so I've seen this process many times for myself and others of how do we get past the fear of putting our work out there? How do we launch? And the thing that it all comes back to so many times that I've learned is we have to look at how we see success ourselves personally, right? We grow up learning what success is from different people, maybe our parents, our teachers, um, people who we see in the media or things like that. And when it comes to being an author, the stories we're often told about success is that you're a New York Times bestseller, you're on Oprah's book club, maybe you're interviewed by Oprah, you have a worldwide tour, things like that. And for me personally, my dad always saw a successful writer as like a Dinar Kuntz or a Stephen King type, where it's a serial novelist who's widely known, hugely rich and famous at this point. So those were the stories in the back of my mind a lot of times. But then as I've put my books out there and as I've published, I realized those weren't really success to me. I wanted to learn how to do some of the things myself. I wanted each book launch to be a little bit different so that each time I was adding more skills, um, whether I launched on Amazon or maybe built my own website and did it that way. I've always been really interested in knowing who my readers are. So I enjoy selling something on my website more than on Amazon because I can see who that person is and where they're from. I can connect with them. I realized my first 100 sales of a book are actually so important to me. And not to say that eventually one day I want to sell more books and, reach some of these other benchmarks of success, but for me, it was all about telling true stories, honoring stories that I needed to tell to a younger version of myself. Um, I had this moment with my most recent book, my memoir, where my husband read a chapter of it and his response, just seeing like the emotion in his eyes. And we had this conversation where I realized like there are parts of me that he didn't even know yet. And because he read my book, he saw that. That was a moment of success for me. Had nothing to do with my book needing to be read by millions of people, right? And so, one concept that I want to give to you today is just the idea that you need to define success for yourself, or else someone else is going to give you a version of what it looks like to them. But what can end up happening is you're chasing someone else's dream and you don't know why you don't feel satisfied. Um, so starting to look at what is success for you, that's really important. Um, what is it that you really want to get out of this? Like, why are you writing this book in the first place? What's that about for you? And what are the things that actually feel like they give you contentment and relief and fulfillment versus what are the things that actually feel draining? The example I think of is the book tour. As an introverted person, the thought of going on a book tour actually kind of scares me because I don't know if I'm going to enjoy that. That's a lot of peopling for the day. It's a lot of putting yourself out there. Not to say I won't try it someday if that opportunity presents itself, but um, yeah, success looks different for everyone, and you have to keep that in mind. The other thing is that publishing a book is really this rare opportunity. It's not like much else in life. You are literally becoming the author of your life in a new way. You're embracing this new identity, this new version of yourself. Yes, that happens like the night that your book goes live. You weren't an author, but now you are. But that shift also takes time. So giving yourself compassion and time is really important. Um, I also want you to think about what's unique about you and who you are and who you've become over time, right? If you're neurodivergent like me, you think differently than most people. You have unique personality traits and personal preferences, right? Like maybe you're outgoing, maybe you're not. Maybe you know your human design. You've also got to think about like what you've been through in life and how it's shaped you, what healing you've experienced. How are your relationships right now? What stage of life are you in? Do you have a certain budget for this project? All of those things are going to determine how you go about launching your book in a way that's right for you. And keep in mind, it can be as unique as you are. It does not have to fit in a certain mold. It does not have to be like any other book launch you've seen. You get to pick and choose what you want to do. And what if this experience could be fun, right? Instead of having it be added stress, added pressure, what if it's something that you could actually enjoy? Right? That might require breaking out of the box that someone's been trying to put you in. That might require ignoring advice that you find online or from other authors. Um, and I just want to give this idea too that like a quiet launch is very meaningful and just as important as trying to get your book in the hands of as many people as possible. Um, I've found over time with my books the way that I wanted to do a launch changes. Um, some books I didn't feel the need to really spend a ton of time or energy promoting them. Others I knew I want to get this book to as many people as I can. Um, so as you think about that, like consider, do you give yourself permission to shift and change as your needs, shift and change? Do you allow yourself to try new things and see which one you like better? Um, it's really all about this growth mindset approach of seeing things not as failures, but just as experiments and ways to learn and ways to grow. Um, the other question I think is so powerful to ask yourself is how do I want this experience to feel? I have this picture of me on my wedding day on this slide because a friend who was helping me plan the wedding, she asked me this question and it changed the rest of my experience in planning. Instead of getting so caught up in the details, I had better perspective of being able to pull back and say, okay, like I don't need to overthink or stress about these little things. I want that day to feel calm and confident. And so knowing that I can make decisions more easily. The other big thing to think about when it comes to launching your book is your level of self-trust, right? Do you trust yourself to make good decisions? And why is that? Or why isn't that? Are there certain situations where it's easier for you to trust yourself than others? Being aware of this can help. Um, you've got to keep in mind too that the inner monologue, right? The things you're telling yourself, the thoughts you're having all day long, that is going to shape your experience as well. If you're being hard on yourself all the time, that's a much different experience than having compassion. And, you know, we get these feelings like, oh, I should be farther along than I am, or I'm running out of time for this. If you're feeling behind, like, who's saying that? Is that coming from you? Is that coming from something you're comparing yourself to? Is there a ton of pressure on your shoulders? Like, do you feel like it's all your responsibility, or do you feel comfortable asking for help? Um, and then again, just coming back to this really deep sense of what you want. Like, what is it that you really want? Is it that you want people to give you feedback? Is it that you want to have finished something and feel good about that for yourself? What's really driving you? Um, as you think about that, you can also think about what are the things you're doing because you want to, or things you just feel obligated to do. Um, are you doing something just because you've always done it or you've seen all authors do it? Um, checking in with how your body feels, right? Grounding yourself, taking time to breathe and really like process and feel things. Um, I'll share a little bit now about what has really worked for me and what I feel like is a really great starting place for any author who's launching a book. Instead of getting so caught up in like, I need to sell thousands of copies, I need to reach millions of readers. What about those first 100 people that buy your book? What if you could learn from them, you know, and find some little bit of contentment in just in that? Um, what about having a VIP group, a group of people who you know are going to know about this book, and just getting really consistent with talking to them about it? Choosing one way to communicate with them and just continually showing up and saying, here's the latest update. Um, here's the latest update. My cover is done. Here's the latest update. The book launch date is going to be this, right? And then I want to go into this concept of expanding your zone of tolerance, what you're used to. Um, basically, that's this idea of the comfort zone, right? We hang out in a certain place a lot of the time. We do the same things over and over again. We think the same way. We start to stretch beyond that. And so we'll create a new comfort zone that's a little bit bigger. And then we kind of have to cycle through that. Just like anything in life, just like anything in nature, it starts as the seed and then it grows, eventually sprouting and blossoming and bearing fruit. Um, and so you could experience that with one thing, say your job, and once you're over here thinking about relationships or creative projects, like again, it's a new cycle, it's a new comfort zone expansion that has to happen. Um, we can also think about peak performance, right? The stress response in the body. When we're in the middle, when we're at that like calm and focused state, that's very different than feeling overwhelmed, anxious, like heart rates out of control. And then on the other side, we would just be bored, right? Like we wouldn't be um, experiencing much at all. The other way you could think of this as like moving from comfort out into courage, right? And going from what's familiar, things that feel easy and safe, to things that feel new. Maybe it's a bit of a risk, almost like an adventure. Um, so as we're going through this, as I go into these next slides talking about things like social media, start to consider, where is your comfort zone, right? Where are you at right now? Can you identify that, but also see that in kind of a neutral light, right? Not saying that you should be anywhere else besides where you are, um, but just knowing that this experience of launching a book is going to grow you and grow that comfort zone. And you get to be deciding when that's right for you, right? How far to go and then when to come back and recenter. Um, so that's really important. Um, so one thing I want to cover is, how do we make marketing more palatable if you're really not into social media or not even on social media? A lot of times I hear authors say how, I just feel like I have to post. And I know that to be successful, you have to post, and it's just there's so much noise. Like, how do I even compete? And while those things are true, and sometimes that's a big part of the story, I think there's also this piece of like, I'm just scared to be seen. I'm scared for people to know about what it is I'm writing about. I'm scared to put myself out there. And there's not just that fear of being seen, there's other fears that might be layered in that you're experiencing. Fear of being rejected, right? Someone reading your book and not liking it. The fear of failure, fear of maybe nobody even cares or sees it. On the flip side, you might have a fear of success. Like, what would it mean if this really took off? Would it be stressful for me? Would it mean more responsibility? Um, fear of the unknown, I think that's kind of a given if you're launching a book because you don't really know what's going to happen until you do it. Fear of change, right? Fear of becoming this new version of yourself that's different. And I have this picture on this slide of me teaching yoga because in my early days of teaching yoga over 10 years ago, I faced every single one of these fears. Um, it was very much out of my comfort zone to be at the front of the room, center of attention, leading people through the whole class. And that experience helped me find my voice in a similar way that writing and publishing my books has. Both have been very profound ways of identifying, okay, when is it that I get scared and what's that really about? It's nuanced. There's more to it than just, oh, I'm scared that something bad could happen. And so, one thing that I encourage you to do is to sit with that question of, what am I really scared of? Like, why is it that I haven't been showing up to talk about my book? Or why is it that the thought of doing that is so scary? Um, did something in the past happen that maybe I'm worrying could happen again? And then it's also really important to reframe how you see marketing in general, right? A lot of us feel like it's icky, it's salesy, but when you really think about it, it's just sharing from your heart about what's important to you. And there's got to be something in your life. I know there is something that you love that you could just sit and talk to a friend about for hours, right? You would never feel guilty for sharing with them about that thing. Maybe it's something you both have a common interest in. So think of that. Like, what does that feel like when you could happily share from this authentic place? You don't worry about them judging you or, you just sharing. How can you replicate that feeling with your book, right? Because they're not that different. We've just been programmed to think that way. Um, so with that in mind, with this new framework of what marketing your book even is, now let's talk about strategies for what you can do. Big question, maybe the number one question to be asking is, where are your readers? Where are they already? This could be local, in person, but also just online. If you use an AI tool or Google and do some searching, you might find some new ideas for how to talk about your book, who to talk to about your book. So think about the themes and topics that you've got in your book, and then search those with phrases like Facebook group, podcast, event, or forum, and just see where that takes you. See what you find when you do that. You'll discover things you didn't know exist that maybe overlap with your project, right? Maybe there's authors out there who are talking about some of the same things. Um, yeah, there's these little communities online that we just don't even realize exist until we start to look for them. I also encourage you to try Reddit, and look up, the things that are relevant to your book and see what conversations are happening already. You could also use hashtags as a way to search. Um, and you start to see like, okay, who are these voices? What are they talking about, right? What's happening in the comment thread as you go farther and farther down? Are there problems that these people are facing that they need help solving? Like, how does your book fit into that mix? Um, Another thing you could try is asking people you know, whether they're clients or friends, where they find books that they love, especially if it's the kind of book that you've written. So just reaching out to them and asking, and then thinking about for yourself, where do you find good books? How do you hear about the new books? How did you hear about the books that have changed your life more than any other book? Um, if you were your own ideal reader, what would you be up late at night searching or looking up or finding? Um, and then you can also think about like the emotion behind your writing. Um, Say you have like a more gentle, spiritual, introspective kind of book. Would those people be maybe at yoga classes or in certain kinds of groups? If it's something more raw and powerful, maybe it's an art group or an activist group. Uh, you could look locally at like Eventbrite, Meetup, and libraries. What are the groups who might be interested in your book doing? And if it's helpful, you could also look at what other authors are doing. But I will put just a caveat here of noticing how your body responds when you do that. If that kind of sends you into this like overthinking spiral, worrying, thinking you should be farther along than you are, then I would say just set that aside and focus on your own searches, not comparing yourself to someone else. And with all of this, whatever you find, keep notes, write it down, keep it either in your notebook or somewhere digitally so that you can refer back because you're going to find a lot of information and you want to be sure to capture it. Um, Oops, I do have that slide twice. The other really cool thing you can do is think about your favorite author, right? Writers out there who have changed your life. If you were to sit down with them, what questions would you ask them about where they got to today? Um, they are just real human people, just like you, right? They started off at the beginning. Um, they did their own version of, moving into publishing and having their books be read. And so just reminding yourself, like, we're all humans who are becoming authors, I think is really important. Um, I do often find too with clients that there are these beliefs and thoughts that have been popping up in their heads, whether or not they're aware of that. And sometimes those thoughts and beliefs are holding them back, right? Sometimes those things need to be reframed or completely flipped into something new. Um, People often feel like, well, I'm not a real author, right? You see this in the running community too, where people are like, well, I'm not a real runner. Well, if you go out and run, then you are a runner. Doesn't matter how fast you are. Um, we also see people worrying about marketing being like too braggy. You don't want to seem full of yourself, but really it's storytelling. Um, it's the way that you connect, right? It doesn't have to be a performance. It doesn't have to be anything that you don't want it to be. But yeah, we experience that online nowadays. Like people are performing or trying to appear a certain way. And so we feel like we have to compete with that or fit in to those different things. Whereas what if we could just be ourselves, you know? Um, Another common one I see is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to keep up with like all the trends. Um, the thing is, you're gonna have to start somewhere. And so you just kind of have to learn and experiment as you go and see what's working for you. There's also this concept of like the book will just sell itself. Um, but that's not really the case, right? There's just so much out there now to cut through the noise. You need to be the one behind your book, standing behind it, championing it, believing that people do want to hear from you. So if you are an introvert like me, here's some ideas to think about too. Um, as I was putting together this presentation, I came across this really cute cat who has knocked over the uh, planter, and it just got me thinking about how cats do their own thing, right? They come and go as they please. They demand love on their own terms. Um, And if you're an introvert, I think you need that same approach of I'm going to do what works for me. I'm going to keep tabs on what I'm needing, right? Where's my battery at for the day? How I show up on 100% day is going to be different than, 40% or 20% where I just don't have the energy to do as much. And just paying attention to what drains you and what energizes you is so important. Um, if you tend to overwork yourself, if you tend to push past, you know, when you run out of steam, like this book that you're launching is actually a chance to rewire that pattern, to choose something new for yourself. Um, and that is profound, right? That's a huge choice to make, to actually have it be an experience of well-being rather than depletion. And I said it earlier, I'll say it again. There's really no shame in having a quiet launch. This is a picture of me with my dog with one of the smaller books that I've done. It's a book of poetry about the fall season. And I had so much fun writing it. I would go on these walks and see the trees changing and reflect on them. And I did not feel the need to have as many people as possible know about this book. It really wasn't about that for me. And at the end of the day, when that book was finished, I felt so satisfied and complete just having done it. So if you're in a place where, maybe you've written something and you don't even want to launch it, or you've written something and you want it to be available, but you don't feel the need to make announcements about it, that's okay too. You're not going to hear that from many other coaches or publishers. They're going to want you to make money off your book, right? But it's just not always about that. Um, I'll also say too, like if you are going to hire a coach or a team, maybe they're like a PR team or a marketing team or an ads expert, just think about their style, right? Are they going to push, 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 or are they more slow and steady kind of mentality? I included this picture of these giraffes because I feel like they're just doing their own thing, you know. Um, we can easily get caught up in what other people are teaching and saying is the one way to get something done. There's a lot of scams out there, even in self-publishing, where you just don't know if the results someone is promising you are realistic. Um, Make sure first it aligns with you, who you are and what your style is and what you're wanting for this project. Because you can't force somebody else's template. Um, I will say, I think some of the things to practice, no matter what kind of book you're launching or whether you're trying to reach 10 people or 1,000 people, practicing introducing yourself as an author is really important. Sometimes even that can be difficult. So saying it to yourself and to people and practicing what that feels like, being able to share what the book itself is about. Um, why did you write it? Who is it for? You can expect as you go to launch your book to say those things lots and lots and lots of times. And it's okay if you answer those questions differently depending on what room you're in. It's actually fun to play around with that. If you really want to challenge yourself, record yourself doing it and then listen back and see what you're noticing. Um, and then two, like, can you give yourself permission to take this idea of cringe out of it? Right? When you're new to something and it's your first time navigating this, you're not going to be quite as polished as you would be 5 years from now. So give yourself that grace. It's just like when you wrote your book. Um, you hand it over to your editor to look at the first draft. You can't expect that draft is the same as a book, that's been through 10 rounds of editing. Like, we got to have more reasonable expectations for ourselves. The other important thing to think about is really giving yourself permission to replenish your energy when you're tired. Um, every book I've launched, there's been at least one moment of just feeling that vulnerable, like, ooh, I am on display. people know this thing about me or can see like deeper into my experience. And that can hit you at any time. Like you just don't always know when to expect it. But one of the best things you can do is just take breaks, right? Take breaks from your phone, breaks from being available to talk to people. This picture was from a trip my husband and I took last summer after I launched my memoir. And I needed that. I needed that break. You don't even need to leave town to experience that, but just having those boundaries for yourself and being able to say, like, I'm done for the day, I don't have any more to give. I'm just going to give to myself is really helpful. Being aware of your emotions too, right? It's normal to feel a range of emotions when you publish a book. You might feel scared, you might feel excited, you might feel overwhelmed. And first, just being aware of what is it that I'm feeling. And then trying to find that balance, right? If you've been in kind of a heightened state for a while, doing the things that help you come back down. Um, yeah, and let's just normalize that it is scary. Like it's a rush sometimes. It can feel like a free fall. You don't know what's going to happen next. But will you take that as an opportunity to look closer and see what it is you're really scared of? Because there's lots of different things that it could be. Um, so take some time to explore that. I want to round out this presentation by giving you some 30, 60, 90-day strategies. Um, no matter where you are in launching, you could use this when you first launch. You could also use this like 6 months, a year later to relaunch your book. I will encourage you to keep it simple, right? We tend to want to overcomplicate things and do that as a way of staying small and staying hidden. So if it's feeling too complicated, break it down into just one step, right? Just do number one from these lists. So if you're 90 days out, what I really want you to do is think about what is success for this book project? What do you want to feel when your book is out in the world? What do you want this launch experience to feel like? Is it going to be a thrill? Is it going to be peaceful? Is it going to be exciting? Right? Like, what is that? And you might get really specific with success, saying, like, okay, here's how many copies I want to sell, or here's how many people I want in my launch group. You could also keep it general. You could keep it like, I want to feel proud of myself. That's what success looks like for me. And so you can come back to that, right? That can be a grounding um, thing for you to know. And so as you're also looking at success, how you want it to feel, I want you to think about your zone of tolerance. Where are you now? If you're someone who never posts on social media, it's probably not going to make sense for you to suddenly post every day for 90 days. Like that would be too much of a shift. Um, how are you, like, how much tolerance do you have for being seen, for being in the spotlight, for putting yourself out there? If it's zero, like we're just trying to get the smallest increase, right? So yeah, this applies to the emotional side and the technical side. Like if you post once a week, maybe you start posting twice a week. But if you don't post at all and you don't want to post, if that's not what success looks like to you, you know, focus on something else. Um, Number three, who are my readers and where are they hanging out? Like we talked about, this is one of the biggest questions for you to be asking. Um, Ultimately, you want to get your book to your readers. So you need to think about who that audience is. It might shift and change over time, and that's okay. Number four is your VIP list, right? Who are these people who are going to know about the book no matter what? Out of all the people in the world, those are your VIPs. They know what's happening. They know how you're feeling, what you're up to. They know exactly where to get your book and when it's launching. And just pick one way of communicating with them. You could email them, you could have a Slack channel for them. You could get them in your Facebook group, right? Don't worry about communicating with them in every place. Pick one and just stick to it. Before we go to the 60-day, I just want to remind you that another really big thing to keep asking yourself is how you're feeling about trusting yourself, right? I have this image here of the inner child. Um, so yeah, going deeper, right? Thinking about self-trust, not just your strategy for launch, right? If you're not trusting yourself to make good decisions and to follow those instincts, I don't know that any of it's going to work anyways. So 60 days out, we're looking at, okay, what kind of a launch is this? Are we going to go big? Are we going to keep it small and intimate, somewhere in between? Think about how you want that week to look. Think about how you want that day to look, right? When are you announcing things? Are you maybe going to do a giveaway of your book as a way to generate interest? Is that giveaway incentivized? Like, do they need to join your email list to be entered to win? Are you going to have some kind of online launch party or a Zoom call where you answer questions? Um, are you going to plan an in-person party? If so, now's the time to be getting all of those ducks in a row. The other thing I would highly encourage you to do is celebrate how far you've come, right? If you started at 90 days, you're already a month in with this launch. And even if you still have 60 days to go, like you have achieved so much in starting to put yourself out there and starting to think about your book launching differently. This is a great time to celebrate what's working and to make adjustments for whatever's not working. Like we talked about before, get really good at talking about what your book is, who it's for, why you wrote it, right? You can even practice writing these things down every day, journaling, you know, it'll grow and expand as you do it. And there's no wrong answers, right? Give yourself permission for there to be no wrong answers about that. Because sometimes we sit there and we go, well, what is my book about? I don't know who it's for. But when you really sit there and think about it, you already know. Like, you know. Okay. And then we're just going to continue with those weekly updates to your VIP group. Your VIP group knows exactly, they're on the pulse of what's happening with this book. Again, checking in. Do you trust yourself? Are you making decisions from that aligned place of going, yep, I know what I want and I'm going to go for that? Um, when we're aligned like that, then all the strategy stuff clicks and works and like 10x's. But if you're sitting there feeling like, I don't want to do any social media posts, and then you're forcing yourself to do social media posts, it's just, there's a disconnect, right? So honor what it is you want to do and just do that. So 30 days out, again, we're going to celebrate. We're going to take time to celebrate, even though the book hasn't officially launched yet, because you've done so much for it. Number two is like take a pulse check of your energy. Do you want to ramp up and challenge yourself to post every day? Or are you like, oh my gosh, I need to take a little bit of a breather here, right? Honoring that. Where's your battery at? Number three, what can I surrender? So launching a book is actually a big exercise in letting go, right? Because some of it's going to be outside of your control. The technical aspects of it, of like, okay, well, how quickly did the upload process? It's like that is not in your control. So you're going to have to surrender. Um, and then two, like this is a project that's been so near and dear to your heart. Now you're letting it go. You're letting it go off and have its own life in the world. And you won't always know how people are going to react. So, what are the things that help you release and surrender? Do those things right now, 30 days out. In your VIP group, you're still giving those weekly updates. And I would say around the launch, the day before, day of, and day after are three very critical days where you're just going to remind people of what's going on. You're going to say it more than once, maybe more than you want to. Because people need those reminders, right? It's not going to be top of mind for everybody in the launch group, but you need to show up and remind them of what's going on. Number five is coming back to where we started, right? How do you want this to feel? And if you want this to feel calm, but this is feeling overwhelming, how do you need to adjust, right? So paring it back, simplifying, and going back to what that is that you want to feel. Um, I want to really emphasize this, and that is that you are not annoying for telling us about your amazing book. In fact, what a gift that you're willing to take some time out of your day to share so that other people hear about it, so that those people you haven't met yet can meet you, right? So that those doors can open, so that success can come your way. Um, that is absolutely not annoying. People want to hear from you. People want to know what your book is about, and it's up to you to tell them. I'll just leave you with this too. If you would like to go even deeper into this self-trust exercise, make some time to get to know your inner critic, your inner champion, your inner child. These are the parts of you that are sometimes at play when these kinds of growth experiences come along. Um, if that inner critic voice is really loud, like take a moment to sit with her and ask her what she's so worried about, right? What message does she want you to know? If you just banish her and tell her to go away, she's still going to be there. She's still going to be trying to get your attention. Same is true with the inner champion and the inner child. And man, if you get all of them to sit down and have lunch with you, that's a very interesting conversation too. I'm going to say it again because as first time authors, we need to hear this probably 100 times before we actually believe it and it sticks. But like I said before, you are not annoying for showing up and promoting your book. You're a gift. That is a gift that you're giving. So please keep giving that. Um, Lastly, you could think about success again, right? That's where we started. When you think back to moments where you've felt like a success, why was that, right? And who helped you get there? Who helped you feel like a success? Are there any patterns there that you can look at that would apply to this book launch? Um, at different book launches, I've wanted to learn different things. And I didn't wait till I was ready or felt ready. I just knew, okay, this is what I want to learn. I want to learn how to speak in front of a crowd or make a video about myself and post it on my website. Um, so, what would you like to learn this time around? And remember, you're creating an experience from within. You're letting go of what's outside of your control. Um, you're the one that's deciding where to go from here. That's how you create the launch that feels authentic and true to you. It starts from inside. Um, yeah, I hope this presentation has been helpful to you. Um, so happy to have shared in this journey with you. Would love to hear your thoughts on this concept, this topic, the things that resonated for you. You can connect with me through my website, confidentauthors.com, or you could email me, rachel@rachelwarmath.com. I would love to be someone that's in your corner with your book launch. I understand all of the emotions that go into it. I'm so proud of you for writing your book to begin with and now putting it out into the world. Would love to stay connected with you. And yeah, I hope you got something great out of this presentation and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much.